Welcome everybody to the Storytime channel. My name is Steven, and today we have some malicious compliance stories. Our first story of the day is by D. Kaplinger, Burning My Lieutenant. I was a deputy sheriff for 12 years, 7 of which were spent in the courts. By the time this incident happened, I had been promoted to the position of chief of the courts division. At first, I reported directly to a captain who was the chief of operations of the sheriff's office. He and I got along great, but then he moved on to greener pastures. Then I was informed I'd be reporting to a lieutenant who was the chief of the detective division. The lieutenant and I did not get along at all, and still to this day, almost 10 years since I retired, I utterly loathe him. One day, he decided to pay a visit to the checkpoint where my operations desk was located. He left and came back about 20 minutes later with a write-up he expected me to sign. The reason? I wasn't wearing the standard black clip-on tie the division I was in charge of was supposed to wear. I told him I wouldn't wear their clip-on ties. He told me I had to, as our department policy required clip-on ties for safety, so people could not use our ties as a ligature to choke us to death. Several weeks before the encounter, I had purchased 4 or 5 regular ties, all in paisley prints, tied them into perfect length ties with double Windsor knots and a perfect crease coming out from just below the knot. Then I made a major modification to the ties. It just so happened I was wearing one of them as he made a jerk of himself. As he stood there trying to get me to take and sign the write-up, I told him I refused and he requested an appeal to the sheriff. It was the first time I opted a direct appeal for the sheriff to decide. He had me sit in the hall as he went to talk to the sheriff, surely to set me up for failure. Then I was asked to enter. I sat down, and the lieutenant demanded I explain why I would not follow the black clip-on tie policy. The policy existed for safety so people could not use our ties as a ligature to choke us to death. I knew what the policy said because I wrote it. When the sheriff was first elected, he asked each division chief to write up their own policies and procedures. My predecessor had made some minor changes to the policies for people in my division, but I thought they were too restrictive and needed some changes to inspire creativity. I rewrote the policies for my division, and they were approved by the sheriff. I sat down and removed my tie clip, located about halfway down my tie, then pulled on my tie, which easily detached. See, after I bought them, I put them on one by one and tied them so they had the perfect length and knot on the tie. I added an extra 2 inches to the neck size, cut the tie in half, and sewed in Velcro, which would easily become hidden at the back of the neck. The sheriff thought the idea was sound, so he allowed it. I then pointed out a glaring problem which my lieutenant had caused. He made us wear lanyards with our department's initials repeatedly all the way around the lanyard, on which we would clip our agency's employee identification to. The lanyards were pretty wide, about 2/3 of an inch wide, and made of multiple layers, as it could be worn reversibly. My lieutenant spat out, "So?" At this point, I stood up and pulled as hard as I could on the lanyard, and as I knew it would happen, it didn't budge at all, meaning our ties were safe, but the lanyard put us in danger of being choked, as they had no other measure for quick release for safety. I didn't get a lot of chances to burn my lieutenant. We really hated each other, but when I did, the burning glare of the sheriff staring at my lieutenant was so worth it. It was a burning glare I'd see shot at my lieutenant several times, and with each one, I prayed our division would be taken from his purview. Just before I was forced into medical retirement, I really had developed 2 debilitating conditions. I got my wish. I got our judges to agree to a change in our uniforms, and without asking permission first, I had the deputies in my division to go to our uniform supplier to get measured. I did this on the premise we needed actual uniforms for special assignments, funerals for fallen officers and soldiers from the area, and most importantly, to help my deputies feel like deputies. I submitted a requisition request for 3 uniforms for each of my employees, and it was approved. This put us under the lieutenant, serving as chief of the uniformed division. Finally, someone I could actually get along with. I miss the job, but I don't miss my old lieutenant. Justice is a dish best served cold. I've got a few more stories of me absolutely burning my lieutenant. I may submit them as time goes on. In that sit down with the supervisor, if that was you and you had to demonstrate that the lanyard was a true choking hazard versus the clip-on tie, would you be willing to grab the lieutenants to make the example, or would you keep it strictly to your own? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Citizen Alpha. Civilian dependent wife demands salute because of her husband's rank. There are a handful of rules to saluting in the American military. The when, why, and how is drilled into you from boot camp until the day you leave. Even the order in which the salutes are rendered have meaning. When it comes to vehicles, there are helpful insignia and stickers to indicate if it's an officer, such as a colored sticker located on the front windshield. My base was small enough where it was everyone's job at some point to do sentry duty at the front gate, which had housing for military families. Sentry duty was pretty basic. You'd stop every vehicle, check IDs, and then wave them through. If they were an officer, you'd see it coming with those colored stickers, and after verifying the identity of the officer, you'd salute and send them on their way. One day while on duty, I approached a vehicle with an officer's sticker, and there was only the officer's wife driving in the vehicle. I returned her ID, wished her a nice day, and waved her through. Pausing with a stern look, "Where's my salute, Petty Officer OP?" Now, Karen here was wife to a higher-ranking officer and has clearly fallen under the impression people are saluting her somewhere along the way. Some of the junior enlisted might have even been saluting her, as they're pretty easy to bully and more prone to freak-ups. I politely replied, "Ma'am, salutes are only rendered to commissioned officers." Angrily pointing her chubby little fingers at the front of her windshield toward her husband's officer sticker, "I have a sticker and you need to salute the sticker." Curtly, I continued, "I'm afraid that sticker is not an officer either." Frustrated, she pulled through and left my post. My cover guy, the guy keeping me safe with a big gun, and I watched her drive down the street and pull right into the administrative building with the top brass and huffed into the building as quickly as her soft, crappy body would take her. We exchange a look between us with wry smiles, knowing exactly where this was probably going. Later that day, we get a new official base-wide mandate. From here forward, all enlisted will salute vehicle stickers of officers regardless of who's in the vehicle. Roger that. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. It's worth noting that when you salute an officer as enlisted, you do it first, and you hold that salute until you are saluted in return and they lower theirs. Only then do you lower your salute. It signals that you're saluting them and they're replying. Additionally, when saluting a group of officers, you generally direct your salute and greeting to the highest-ranking individual. Now, as far as I know, this stupid sticker salute order has no accommodation for how a 2004 Toyota Camry fits into the officer's pecking order. Additionally, if the car is unoccupied, it's not like that sticker is removed. After that order came through, we all began saluting stickers. Personally, I direct my salute to the sticker. I would also prioritize sticker salutes over officers. Let me tell you, walking through parking lots was a blast, as I saluted empty cars on my way to wherever. More and more people saw me doing it, and more people started doing it. Not long after, the order was publicly rescinded, which hilariously had the balancing effect of never rendering a salute to anyone but a clearly known officer, cementing Karen never getting her unearned salutes. I was really waiting for the moment that they would be standing there saluting the sticker, just waiting for the moment that the sticker salutes back and never getting it. Some say Officer Charleston's still saluting that sticker in the parking lot. Gotta commend an officer with the resilience like that. This next story is by Tommy Knocker 42, How I Achieved Malicious Compliance with Tea. Hey all, I thought I would share one of my favorite stories of following someone's request and making them rethink their words. The main players are me, my younger brother, and the teacher we will call Mr. Shane. This happened in high school in my senior year and is my favorite story of being a smart butt. We had this teacher we will call Mr. Shane. He was an older, very strict teacher who came to my rural Midwest town from inner city Chicago, so he thought he could handle just about anything a student threw at him. No one liked Mr. Shane. He was rude, loud, and for him, if you didn't do what he said, it was a one-way ticket to the office. Even the principal got tired of him sometimes. I was a quiet, nerdy, metalhead teenager who was on track to graduate early and earn a couple of awards from the district. I put forth effort to get along with everyone. My younger brother hated Mr. Shane for many reasons, like reading mine and his IEPs, very confidential stuff normally, in front of the class and managed to get away with it. Needless to say, Mr. Shane was incredibly unpopular. I used to bring a can of Arizona tea with me to school because it's dirt cheap and actually pretty tasty. If you've had it, you will understand how good it can be. Mr. Shane had a problem with this because I'm pretty sure if he wasn't asserting his dominance, he thought he wasn't doing his job. I didn't distract people with the tea, but he was fed up with me and my brother calling him out on his stuff. So one day he told me not to bring any more because I didn't bring enough for everyone else. Challenge accepted. The very next day, I stopped at the grocery store on my way to school and picked up 2 gallons of Arizona green tea, along with red Solo cups. I let slip to one of my best friends that's also in the class, and he could barely contain his excitement. When time for class came, Mr. Shane walked in and looked smug, up until he saw me giving my classmates Arizona green tea. I even offered him a glass, and he exploded in anger and sent me to the office before confiscating all my tea and cups. When I told the secretaries, they laughed and sent me in to talk to the vice principal. The vice principal was incredibly amused by my story, and a few minutes later, my brother came into the office as well, with the gallons of tea and cups. Apparently, Mr. Shane lost it and was ranting to himself the rest of the school day over disrespectful students. He stopped teaching after that school year, and I'd like to think I had a hand in that. For some reason, my brain defaulted to, that's gonna actually cost a little bit getting 20 to 30 cans of Arizona green tea, but then I realized, oh yeah, they do gallon jugs, don't they? And I gotta agree, Arizona green tea is good, and it is cheap, even the gallon jugs. I actually have several in my kitchen right now. And our final story of the day is by Emotional Sector 1329. Of course I will follow the belt rule and get a student expelled. Some context: from 2001 to 2010, I, male 24, went to a truly vile Catholic school that was part of our local church that we attended. The students and staff were homophobic, racist, and xenophobic, and being a goth Latinx student, I was bullied by students and staff alike. This school had a pretty strict dress code requiring students to wear a uniform, and the boys had to tuck in their shirts and wear a belt. This was a problem for me because the staff and students would love to hit me with a 1-2 punch where the students would steal my belt during gym class and the teachers would conveniently do a belt check, and this would result in me getting countless detentions. It was hard to prove that this was happening, as having an extra belt in your locker wasn't suspicious, and we never labeled our belts because who steals belts? Anyway, after my parents caught wind of what was happening, they immediately scheduled a meeting with the principal, vice principal, and the pastor of the church. In my parents' defense, they didn't know how crappy the school was, and after learning about the racist and homophobic views of the Catholic Church, we promptly left and joined a much more accepting church. Dad says, "So it has come to my attention that my son keeps getting detention for dress code violations caused by other students stealing his belt." The principal says, "Well, we actually have no evidence to prove this, and we just suspect that your son is not wearing a belt as a way to rebel." I say, "I absolutely wear a belt every day." Pastor says, "God requires us to take responsibility for our shortcomings, and we shouldn't blame others for our shortcomings." The principal says, "Well, regardless of the reason, your son needs to wear a belt, and failure to do so from this point forward will result in more drastic consequences." Before my dad can say another word, my mom thanks the three for their time and asks for a printed copy of the dress code, and on her way out she says to me, "Let's buy you a belt that none of these racists or homophobes would ever want to be caught with." So on to the malicious compliance. The next day, I walk into school wearing a rainbow sequin belt that has the words "Gay Pride" in all caps. I had recently come out as bi, so my mom wanted me to be proud of it and bought a series of belts to help me express myself. I was immediately called into the principal's office and was given a lecture on the sanctity of marriage and whatnot. To be honest, I wasn't listening. After she finished her tirade, I handed her a letter that my mom told me to give her when I was inevitably going to be called into the office to be reprimanded. Just like every other day, my belt was stolen at lunch, and when the teacher tried to get me in trouble, I asked her politely to check the lockers of my classmates. Upon doing so, she found my rainbow sequin belt in the locker of one of my bullies and asked him where he got this belt from. And instead of lying and saying it was his, he didn't want to be labeled as being gay because homophobia. He admitted to stealing it. At this point, I had him dead to rights and politely asked him for all of my belts back or compensation for them. His parents ended up having to write us a check because the dummy admitted to throwing all of them away. And since the school kept a log for each belt-related infraction, I could prove he had stolen 20 plus belts. The student was expelled for breaking one of the 10 commandments, and the pastor himself was forced to apologize to me. I left shortly after that and went to a school that accepted me for me and made tons of lifelong friends. I'll tell you what, if that pastor had to apologize to me, I would love to stand there right in front of them, cross my arms, put a big old smile on my face, just really sell to them how much of a total jerk they were being to me. Try to directly make that pastor feel like a bad person. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you do, whether it's just viewing the video, liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, I appreciate the heck out of it. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I can't thank you enough for it. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be right here next time on the Storytime channel.